thank you all for taking time out of your busy day today to join us. My name is Adam Timmerman, and I'm with the Public Policy Department here at the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. Um, as everyone knows, we are in the middle of a pandemic. COVID has changed basically everything about our lives. It's changed how we work, it's changed how we shop, changed how we educate, and you name it, COVID has touched it. And one thing it's about to change, or more appropriately is already changing, is the way we vote. We're slightly over a month away from a major election happening on November 3rd, and we know at the Chamber that people have questions on how COVID is going to impact this upcoming election. That's why we invited today for you all to hear from our region's experts and leaders to share with you what to expect and how elections are going to be operated during this pandemic. Joining us today, we will have Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab, Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, and Kansas City Election Board Director Lauri Ealom. These three leaders and officials will provide you the information you're looking for to ensure that you have a safe voting experience and to ensure that your vote does count. So before we jump into presentations, the way this is going to work is that we'll have all three officials present one right after another, the information that they have for you today. And then after all three are done, we'll open all three up available for Q&A at the end. At the bottom of your screens, you should see a feature that says Q&A. Please type your questions in there during the Q&A portion, and I will ask them to our three officials. And you can also utilize the chat feature on the screen as well. But now for introductions. First, we have joining us from Kansas, the Secretary of State, Scott Schwab. There he is on the screen. Scott was first elected to his position in November of 2018. As Secretary of State, he has placed priority on providing support and guidance to county election officials, improving the office business filing system to ensure it is compatible with industry software, implementing cutting-edge IT security, and making it as easy as possible to register and cast a ballot in Kansas without compromising the election security. Before serving as Secretary of State, he served in the Kansas House of Representatives, where he was first elected in 2002. In that role, he served as chairman of the House Elections Committee, where he championed several pieces of election policy and safeguard Kansas elections and the voting process. He also served as chairman of the House Insurance and Financial Institutions Committee and as Speaker pro tempore of the Kansas House of Representatives. Secretary, thank you for joining us today. After Secretary Schwab, we will have Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft. Secretary Ashcroft is the 40th Secretary of State for the great state of Missouri. I know he'll like me saying that. He was first elected to the position in November of 2016. And each year of this elected statewide office, he has visited every single one of Missouri's 114 counties and met with local election officials, library executives, and business owners to promote the office's services and learn how he can help improve elections and support Missouri libraries and businesses. Secretary Ashcroft is an active member of the National Association of Secretaries of State and has served on the executive committee for NAS. He has spearheaded the National Election Security Summit held in St. Louis. For the summit, he coordinated the program that included national election security experts, local experts from all over the country, and a keynote address from Kirstjen Nielsen from the U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. Election officials from over 25 states and bipartisan groups of 10 secretaries of state attended that event. Secretary Ashcroft's background in education, engineering, data protection, and the law has provided him a unique perspective on election security and has helped shape the forward-thinking efforts of this office. Secretary, thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us today. We're happy to have you. And then our last, and then our last speaker today is the Kansas City Election Board Democrat Director Lauri Ealom. She began her career in election services 10 years ago, capturing the mailroom to the boardroom philosophy. Her positions with the election board include stints in voter services, IT, election services, outreach, and finance. Before becoming the Democratic director, she served as assistant director before being recommended for her current role. As the Democratic director, Lauri works alongside her Republican counterpart managing the day-to-day operations of the 8-department team at the election board, a demanding profession. Election officials work year-round securing funding, supervising the hiring of thousands of seasonal employees, and keeping current on election practices, laws, procedures, and technology. Lauri is a contributing author for the elections case and conversations, and serves her community as a member of the National Association of Election Officials, the Missouri Association of County Clerks, and the Election Administrators. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft's bipartisan Election Integrity Advisory Committee, the NAACP, League of Women Voters, and the Clark Atlanta Alumni Association. She's an advisor to the Council of State Governments and is committed to sharing her insight and knowledge with others. So now we'll start our presentations. As we stated earlier, we'll have Secretary Schwab start us off, and then we'll go straight into Secretary Ashcroft, and then we'll end with Director Ealom. And then at the end of that, we'll have Q&A with all three. So we'll get started. Secretary Schwab, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and thank everybody for joining today. And we're working pretty hard to get the message out that, first off, yes, we're in a pandemic, and there's always concerns about interperson transmission of this disease. But our message is it's safe to vote. Kansas, since 1996, you have not had to have a reason to apply for a mail ballot or an advanced ballot if that's what you want to choose. We also have early in-person voting in all our counties, and we also have election day voting. And we tell folks, if you feel safe enough to go to Walmart or the liquor store, well, then you're safe enough to go vote in the way that you are used to and most comfortable with. But whether you're concerned about being at higher at risk of a mortality population of COVID, that advanced mail ballot is an option for you. Well, you've got to apply for it. The application date is, I believe, October. I'm going to check my notes. Is October 27th to apply for that advanced ballot. But just go ahead and fill out the application now and get it to the election office. That ballot will come to you in the mail. Those will start going out October 14th. And if it's getting close to October 20th and you haven't gotten your mail ballot yet, go ahead and call the county. You can also go to our website, ks.sos.gov, and you can track your ballot. So you can see if they've gotten your application, you can see if they sent your ballot to you, and you can see if they've received your ballot. One thing we're really encouraging folks to do, if you choose to vote by advance, is don't mail it. Actually, the Secretary Ashcroft gave me the analogy of, if you won $1 million lottery ticket, would you send it in the mail? And actually, I got a news story this morning that somebody actually tried to do that, and their lottery ticket didn't get there in time. They forfeited their prize, and it was in the New York Post. But it's the same deal here: is your ballot is not insured. Your ballot is your responsibility. Don't give it to anybody you wouldn't trust with your checkbook. So, and if someone is going to drop off that ballot for you, whether it's a child or a caretaker, on the outside of that envelope, there's a place for them to fill out an affidavit that they're turning in that ballot for you. We're encouraging folks, take a photo of that, and you should get a receipt as well. That way, if for some reason your vote isn't turned into the county office, there's a recourse against that person for failing to turn it in. If you do have to mail it, I know some people, there's no option but to mail it. Continue to check our website to make sure that ballot actually shows up. If not, again, call the election office. Ways to turn in your ballot besides U.S. mail. There's a lot of counties in Kansas that have drop boxes. We gave 2 to every county with our CARES Act money. You can drop it off at the county clerk's office. Some of our rural counties, obviously, the post office is right next to the county clerk's office. So it's simple just to walk that in. The other thing you can do in Kansas is, if you got that advanced ballot, you can go to any polling place in your county to turn it in on election day, and they'll make sure it gets tabulated, or you can turn it in at an early in-person advanced polling place. So rather than putting in mail, and this has nothing to do with COVID or the politics of what's going on with the post office today, it's something we've been saying for a long time is, the U.S. Post Office is a postal service. They are not poll workers, and they're going to treat your ballot pretty much the same way they treat a birthday card or the Hy-Vee shopper that you get in the mail. So unless you absolutely have to mail it, we encourage you to take control of your vote, take control of your ballot, and make sure you get it into one of those drop boxes, a polling place, or the county office. And we did see quite the surge in the primary for mail advanced ballots. Normally we get about 50,000 in the primary. We had over 300,000 on the August primary. So we expect that to be even a bit larger uptick in the general. But our county clerks have the have the poll workers and what they need to make sure those get counted. So we're not concerned about a delay of results from our end in our office. That all being said, we want folks to know we've sent out over 2,200 PPE kits to polling places so that every county got 2 kits per polling place. Plexi shields, masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. Anheuser-Busch, great Missouri company, gave us thousands of gallons, tens of thousands of gallons of hand sanitizer for our polling places that we were able to deploy through the National Guard to our county clerks to make sure polling places are safe. It may look like a long line on election day, but it's not. Because of social distancing, those lines are moving quick, but we want to spread people out. So if you're driving by your polling place and it looks like there's 6, 7, 8 people in line, don't assume it's moving slowly. It's probably to the contrary, it's moving quickly. We just want to spread folks out. So that being said, it's safe to vote. It is your vote, so make sure you're taking care of it and vote. This is your country. And I'm talking to a lot of 18-year-olds that are registered to vote. Even if you're not registered to 18 yet, but you will be by November, go ahead and get registered now. Because, you know, you may think, well, I'm just an 18-year-old, my voice doesn't matter. But you know, if you wanted to play sports or if you wanted to be in school or in college right now and you've been shut down, those are government decisions. And they shouldn't be making those decisions without you having the ability to vote and saying on it. And so they get to make the decision, but you get to vote. So vote for leaders that you support their decisions and engage in this process. I tell 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, it's your country now. You're paying property taxes if you have a car, you're paying sales taxes. If you have a job, got income taxes. You own this country, you own a share in it. So you don't proxy your vote to somebody else. It's your vote and you choose your leaders. So everybody, this is your country, it's your state, it's your city, it's your county, engage. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to the Secretary of Missouri for the great words of wisdom of which he'll entail you.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's always fun to see you and partner with you in these sorts of things. Thank you, Kansas City Chamber, for hosting this event. Before we get into the details of how you can vote in Missouri, just want to talk about how we got here. On the last day of the legislative session, the state legislature passed Senate Bill 631, which added a temporary COVID-related excuse to the allowances for getting an absentee ballot and added a new temporary mail-in ballot option for all registered voters in Missouri for this year. These changes that I'm going to be talking about just apply to this year, but will, of course, get us through the November election. Absentee voting has been an option in Missouri for about 30 years, and adding the temporary COVID-related excuse just took us from 6 to 7 and was a relatively easy process. There is confusion in Missouri with some people because we have absentee ballots and mail-in ballots, and how you may request those, how you are required to turn those in, who may request those are different. The legislature was very specific, and we have to follow what they wrote. So I just want to really quickly, although I never am as quick as people listening to me want me to be, go through the options that we have for Missouri voters. And I think that someone who's smarter than I am with Zoom is going to throw up. Yes, thank you, Adam. Great job. This right here is a little flyer that we've put out electronically. We're giving it out to local election officials. It will actually it's already, I believe, being sent out to every household in Missouri that's been identified as having a registered voter. And this is designed to be for people that know how they're going to vote. They can just look at this and say, well, I want to do absentee voting in person. They can drop down to line number 2, and that gives them their exact steps on how to vote. But as you can see here, of course, you can do in-person voting on November 3rd, which is the safest and most secure way to vote, and also to make sure that your vote counts. You can do absentee voting in person, where once again, you can be certain that your vote will count. You don't have to worry about the post office or whether or not you needed to get something notarized, whether your signature matched, whether or not you filled out all the information, whether or not maybe you accidentally circled 2 candidates for the same office where you're only allowed to circle 1. When you vote in person, you have the opportunity to correct that. When you mail that ballot in and it's received by the election authority, you're not there to correct that. And then, of course, We have the option of absentee balloting for those people that meet that requirement, and any Missouri voter who wishes, any registered Missourian may request a mail-in ballot for the election. If you would go ahead and put up number 2, Adam, the absentee ballot summary. I want to just really quickly go through what absentee ballots are and what they allow you to do. The absentee ballots, you must have an excuse to use those. Thank you. Oh, great. I was just about to ask you to zoom back out, and you were already doing that. Wonderful. Anyone that meets one of these 7 excuses may request an absentee ballot. That absentee ballot may be requested in person. You may mail in your request. You may fill out the form and mail it in. You may fill out the form, sign it, and then take a picture of it and email it in. You may even fax it in if anybody still has a fax machine these days. With regard to absentee ballots, as I mentioned, you do have to have an excuse. There are 7 excuses. There are 6 that we've had for many years: religious belief or practice, working as an election worker, incarceration but still eligible to vote, certified participant in Missouri's address confidentiality program, absence on election day from the election jurisdiction, and incapacity or confinement due to illness. Those are the 6 that we've had previously. The legislature added a 7th, which you can see up on the screen. In 2020, if you have contracted coronavirus or you are at risk due to any of the following: 65 years of age or older, live in a long-term care facility, chronic lung disease, serious heart condition, immunocompromised, diabetes, you can see the list right there. And of course, anyone that has questions about those can go to sos.mo.gov, govotemissouri.com, or 1-800-NOW-VOTE. If you meet any of those 7 reasons for using an absentee ballot, you go ahead and request your ballot either in person or you send it in. In person, if you're just going to go ahead and vote, you go ahead and vote at the election authority, run your ballot through the scanner, you've voted. If you're having that ballot sent to you, it'll get sent to you. You'll vote that, vote it quickly. Don't treat it like some of us treated term papers in high school. The clock is ticking. Go ahead and fill it out. Put it back in the envelope it came with. The envelope will give you directions and will ask you to check which excuse you're using. When you check the excuse that you meet, it will tell you if you need to have it notarized right there on your envelope. If you do need it notarized, get it notarized. If you don't need it notarized, go ahead and just send it back to the election authority. You may do that by mail. You may have an immediate family member drop it off for you, or you may drop it off at the election authority. Our 116 election authorities would be very happy to have you go ahead and drop it off. And in fact, what I've been seeing as I travel the state is a lot of people have requested absentee ballots to be mailed to them, and because of concerns with the mail, they are actually dropping them off when they're done voting them in person. With regard to that absentee ballot, if you are going to mail it in, just like with the mail-in ballot, leave at least 2 weeks for that ballot to be returned by the post office. The post office says that they will get everything delivered within 6 days. We know that's not true. And if you want to hear a funny story, you can ask Secretary Schwab how long it took for him to get his priority mail letter from the U.S. Post Office telling him how long mail should take. I'm pretty sure he still hasn't gotten it yet. The other option that I'd like to talk about is mail-in voting. If we could go ahead and go to that number 3 on the PDF. Any registered voter in the state may request a mail-in ballot. You do not have to have an excuse, but all mail-in ballots must be notarized, and they cannot be picked up in person. You can't vote them in person. When you request it, the election authority has to mail the ballot to you. You fill it out, you get it notarized, and then you mail it back. The law requires you to use U.S. mail for that. The law requires that it be notarized. If you are going to be doing a mail-in ballot or requesting an absentee ballot to be sent to you, you should request that immediately. Do not delay. Technically, you may request that absentee or that mail-in ballot be sent to you up until October 21st. But if you wait that long, you may not have time to get it sent back, All ballots must be returned to the election authority by 7 p.m. on election night to count. As you can see, if you live in Missouri, in-person voting you can do. It's safe, it's secure. We've done 3 elections in Missouri on that already this year. We had record-breaking turnout. I actually testified in front of Congress about how you can successfully do an in-person election under COVID because of the great work of our 116 election authorities across the state, our poll workers, and the great people of the state of Missouri. I've probably put several of you to sleep, so I'm going to go ahead and let Lauri Ealom, Director of the Board of Elections, talk to you. Happy to answer any further questions you might have later.
Okay. Well, there's not much left. Secretary Ashcroft pretty much covered my whole presentation. So I guess what we can say is that we are having record turnout. We do have every form of PPE. I don't want to bore you guys, but literally everything that he said was what I had up prepared to throw on the screen. So is there any questions, I guess?
Here we can jump into Q&A.
Yeah, we can, because I don't really have anything else to share. He
Perfect, because
pretty much covered it.
I've gotten some questions, so we'll start with Q&A. Lauri, as I turn everybody else's screen on, can you go in a little bit about what's happening at Arrowhead and what Patrick Mahomes or maybe what the Royals and the Chiefs are doing with voting coming up this election?
Yes, we will have a poll on at Arrowhead Stadium. It's in the club room. That I guess essentially the deal came up. Most cities were offering their stadiums, whether they be their basketball stadiums or their sports arenas, and so they wanted to offer that to us. The challenge for us was logistics, because elections budgets, as you know, are set long before the elections happen. So we didn't have anything budgeted to have, nor do we have the equipment to provide a poll of that size. So we've been in negotiation for about 3 weeks now, and the deal was done on Monday. And so the Chiefs decided to pay for half, and Patrick Mahomes Foundation, 15 in the Mahomies, decided that they wanted to make an investment in the community. So therefore, he's throwing in the other half. So that will provide us with equipment, the ability to pay staff, hazard pay, additional PPE for a polling location. They've also offered all of their volunteers, so there will be parking lot attendants. They're going to set it up so it's just a route that you follow when you come in, and there will be volunteers that will direct you as to how to get into the stadium, but they're kind of going to block it off, so you have to follow the yellow brick road, so to speak. I think this is a huge undertaking. We're really excited about it. We will have all of the equipment that we need prior to Election Day so that we can staff it properly. And the crazy part is that everybody wants to work at Arrowhead. Now, people want to come vote at Arrowhead that aren't in our jurisdiction, but unfortunately that can't happen. So they're going to provide snacks and treats for the voters, and some cool what is it? They're going to have some vote like a chief, or real fun stickers that they're going to supply us with. I think it's going to be a great experience, and I think the camaraderie of Kansas City in Missouri, I think we need a bit of a pick-me-up. So when they reached out to us, I was all on board. I just had to be forthright. We don't have the money.
Adam, if I could just jump in here. Lauri she is underselling the work that she had to do. Elections, you don't just set up a new polling place from scratch in a couple of weeks. And Secretary Schwab, he's dealt with this before also. Elections take months of planning. Yeah. You have to worry about transportation and where the voters are. And this has been an immense undertaking that she's done. And she should really be applauded. It's not like turning on a light bulb. It took a lot of work to do this, and she was the tip of the spear getting it done. So she did a great job.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I mean, it is challenging, but I guess the way I look at this is that this is totally new. We're in a pandemic. And I guess the challenge, I always get hyped about the challenge. It's almost like I'm an athlete. You know, that zone you get into, it's an election zone, just like before game day. You know, the guys are really in a zone. I'm in the same kind of zone. So pretty much, I guess we jumped the gun by putting it on our poll log. And they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. I'm like, no, we're claiming it. It's going to happen. We just got to claim it. So I'm in my zone at this point, but thank you, Secretary Ashcroft.
That's great. And then I saw, the Royals and Chiefs were doing some registration.
Oh, we're doing some with them too. We've got both teams on board. The Urban Youth Summit, we're having a poll there. And that will also be a central poll. And that is on 18th Street, and that's affiliated with the Royals. And so, I mean, we've got both teams on lock at this point, and I think we're building a great rapport so that this will carry on for years at this point, because they're just as excited as we are.
That's great. That is awesome to hear. And then, as I was saying, it looked like yesterday or maybe the day before, they were doing some registration events out at the stadiums as well.
Yes.
So
we had one. We had one here. We partnered with the Honey Badger, Tyron Matthews, and we had it right out in front of Union Station. It was National Voter Registration Day. September 22nd was also the first day of in-person absentee voting. And so I partnered with them and we made it a big shebang. And I think it was very successful because we were able to register a lot of new voters. And then it was very rewarding to pack boxes and give groceries to the family. And then also for those voters that were already registered, most of them had some medical challenges. So I was able to give out applications. And so it was a cross-functional event. It was about food and it brought the community together. It was uplifting. They gave away Chiefs memorabilia. I mean, it was a great undertaking as well. So we're in our zone.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Scott, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, the Missouri guys are really dominating this right now and all this cool initiative stuff. I don't know. What's Kansas?
Well, and I'm glad it worked. We did a voter registration drive in the urban core down in Wichita, and we were begging the Chiefs to help us, and we couldn't get much of a response. They said, no, we're already helping. I'm like, well, you're helping in Missouri. We need help down here. At least just tweet it or something like that. And they're like, no, we've got it taken care of, And so I'm really glad they're focused on Missouri and helping Missouri. We're kind of up here with the flag saying, hey, we're here. We're neighbors. We're part of this community as well. And, and some of them.
The key is to get to the players. That's the key.
I know.
Get to the players.
Well,
first.
They don't want me stalking them. So it's kind of funny. It's just I don't have that conduit to get into them, and they haven't reached out to our office like I was hoping they would. But that being said, we don't have the urban center that Jackson County has. They have a lot heavier lift trying to exercise an election on a pandemic with completely different budget issues than what Wyandotte County or Johnson County have on the Kansas City side, or on the Kansas side of Kansas City metropolitan area. And a lot of our polling places as it relates to stands or using a stadium just wouldn't work because we put our polling places based on one, if we're not getting much of advanced ballot requests, we're assuming those areas are going to have a high voter turnout on election day. We look at apartment complexes and we try to place them in areas where it still meets the HAVA requirements, but we don't want them to have to travel far to get to a stadium. So in a place like Wyandotte County, it doesn't make sense to take somebody inside 635 to travel all the way out to, let's say, Sporting KC to go vote, when we may have a community center right there in their community and they can vote and it'd be quicker. So the dynamics between the counties in the area are different. And so it's great to see them partner with Jackson County and the state of Missouri like that. We just want them, when we're doing an event, hey, can you just tweet this out? And well, I've worked with Ted Cruz, our comms director. He's been pretty helpful trying to cut through some of it. But let's just be honest, they're in the middle of the football season. And yeah, I know they care about elections. I know they care about Kansas and Missouri. But I think they're also wanting to just run it back. And so that being said, sometimes we don't get the attention we need. But that being said, I'm not sure we need the attention that Jackson County does, because it's a different population. They are so much bigger of a county than what we have in Johnson, in Sedgwick, and Shawnee, or even Wyandotte County.
Well, you made something, you mentioned, this is our first year essentially of being able to commandeer the schools. So the schools have allowed us all of their locations, every single school, and we're using gymnasiums so that we can meet the CDC guidelines. So this was something that actually I've been trying to get into the schools for 9 years. And this is the first year that we've been successful with that. And they even closed on election day. So then we've got some adopt a poll programs. So I pitched the adopt a poll program, and what's happened with that is that the teachers, or say the chair of the cheerleading, the person in charge of cheerleading, a lot of those teachers are working and they're adopting a poll, and then the stipend, we will write one check, and then that will go to that program within the school. So there's things that we've done to make it, I guess we've had years to try to perfect why they're ignoring us. So this time I baited them to the point where they can't ignore us. I mean, every program needs money. I mean, the debate team. And so the teachers, and we've got some student workers now. So I think it's changed the dynamic. We have 4 polls per ward and precinct. And the Chief Stadium is just an extra.
Perfect. Thank you all. So we're going to get into some more questions here. Just for confirmation, Missouri side first, then Kansas side. Registration dates to vote. They're upcoming, right? What's the date to them?
October 7th in Missouri.
And then Scott?
Let me unmute myself because an airplane was taking off next door. Our last day to register is October 13th. And that's pretty important, especially for folks asking for that advanced ballot, because we're going to match your signature from the application to the advanced ballot, the signature on your ID, the signature on your voter registration, to the signature on the envelope of the ballot. And so that's kind of our security measure. So that's why that voter registration is pretty important to us. So, and again, if you're going to be 18 on election day, you can register while you're 17 and it'll automatically kick in by election day. So if you're going to turn 18 on Halloween, go ahead and register now, because otherwise, if you wait till after that deadline, you won't be able to participate.
I second that. Perfect. And then just as clear, I know you guys addressed this during your part, it's all you did, but requesting a ballot by mail and then voting in person. You can do that, correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
With the absentee ballot, if you meet one of those 7 requirements, you can request that in person or by mail. With the mail-in ballot, anybody can do that. They can request it in person or by mail.
Perfect. And then for Missouri, Jay, if you don't mind helping this one, why is it that some absentee ballots are requiring notarization and others don't?
Simply put, it's the way the law is written. If you look at the reasons that require notarization, the thought process was because of health concerns in both of those situations. We weren't, those are people that may be elderly, they may be in a long-term care facility, they may not be able to get out. The legislature decided to make it easier for them. But as far as our office is concerned, we just have to follow the law.
Perfect. And then for attendees, there's the Q&A feature at the bottom for questions, but we had a question come in. There's been a lot of issues, in the news about election security, ballot dumping, ballot harvesting. Do you guys have any comments on that? Just to clear this up for attendees.
Well, I can speak for Kansas real quick. I already explained the signature matching to make sure that your ballot's not being filled out by somebody who doesn't own it. And we have, ever since we got voter ID, and to be honest with you, I'm not so concerned about someone stealing a national election. There's over 3,000 counties with different election systems in this nation. It's gonna take more than Russia to hijack a presidential election. And local election officials, They bleed red, white, and blue, and they do a fantastic job protecting the election. And I get frustrated with the weaponization of elections for political gain. And both parties do it. Let's just be honest about it. But in Kansas, our local election officials do a fantastic job of making sure everything they can do to get your vote to count that counts. And we have a high number of provisional ballots. But I think that's great, because if there's a mistake, it gives us a chance to vote. And it gives the poll workers a chance to correct the problem with you. So if it's, for example, we get an advanced ballot at the county office and it wasn't signed, we're going to work with that voter to get you in there, so get that ballot counted any way they can. If you ask for an advanced ballot and you never got it in the mail and you show up on election day to vote, you're going to get a provisional ballot. And then if we never get the mail ballot, that ballot's going to count. So Kansas has a lot of protection to make sure we don't have voter suppression. And we also don't have, we're not compromising voter security either. Secretary Ashcroft and I are still very concerned about foreign influence, but more that's through social media than it is attacking our systems. Voting machines aren't on an internet. They're not on an intranet. It's hardware to hardware. And so you can't hack a voting machine. And a lot of the videos you see about somebody saying, oh, I tried to vote for this person and this person is the X, they're taking the video out of context. A lot of times you can't change a vote until you finish the ballot, and you got to go back and change it. But so people take a video of it and put it on social media. So I know this is a shock to everybody, but don't believe everything you see on the internet. I know it's new. I was surprised. I couldn't believe everything I read on the internet. No, but in all honesty, when you see some of this stuff on Facebook about compromising, check the news source, because a lot of folks, it's just not true. In Kansas, we haven't had those problems, and I'll let Missouri speak for themselves.
We haven't had those. Oh.
Go ahead, Lauri.
We haven't had those problems either. And just to second what Secretary Schwab said, we do the same things. We do every single application that comes in becomes part of that, scanned in, and that becomes part of your permanent voter record. So therefore, we have different levels. I mean, of course, people's signatures change, but we have different variations of the signature. And we do the same, we do all the same verifications. The challenge is that if people would understand that every state has different election laws, and that the election administrators and officials all across those states have to abide by those laws. We go above and beyond to ensure that people's votes are not suppressed. I mean, I can tell you, we go to nursing facilities. We had a post office issue where they said it's 3 facilities in an enclosed gated community, and they're all on the permanently disabled list. Well, all of those ballots came back. The post office marked them and it said no known address. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's Palestine Gardens. So what we did is, in bipartisan teams, we took the KCB van out and we talked to the activities director, and we ensured that each one of those elders was able to get their ballots. So voter suppression may happen, but I think it's played up an awful lot, because I know my counterparts, not only here at KCB, we do everything we can do. I mean, we risk our lives to vote COVID voters, COVID positive voters, and we do everything under the sun to ensure that you're able to vote, even if you're sick. Pre-pandemic, we went to the hospitals. If the hospital would call up and say, hey, I've got a patient, room 220, here's their name, here's their information, could you send someone out to vote? We sent teams. Unfortunately, now we can't send teams, but the nurses, the charge nurses on the floors, have sent us names of people that potentially may still be in the facility at that time. And then what we'll do is we'll hand it off to the nurse. The person will fill out their ballot. We'll get the ballot back from them. They'll call us and say, hey, we've got it ready. And we're all over the city. So I'm sure in some places there are, but in Missouri, we have more of a challenge with voters not turning out to vote, not people voting 2 and 3 times. They just may not show up. So that's not our challenge. So don't concern yourself. Turn off the TV, Only watch local news when it comes to elections. And I'm saying that all the time. And literally, I think our polls are safer than you are going to Walgreens or the grocery store because you spend more time there. And the lines look long, but you've got so much space in between people, whereas we pack people in close together. So I think the in and out, and one of the things that I think people should do is go to the websites and look at your sample ballots. Use that as a guide prior to election day, because it will make you can do your research. Don't try to do your research in line, because it'll make your voting experience go much quicker, and it'll be fast, efficient, you're in and out, and you're safe, and you will have cast your voice, so to speak.
What I would say is that if you're worried about vote fraud, vote in person. The best way to fight concerns about that is to go vote in person and to get everyone to go vote. There are ways to cheat. I'm not going to give people hints on how to do it now. We're always looking for better ways to stop people. But it's easiest to do at the margins. The best way to not have to worry about vote fraud is to get the people of your state out in large quantities, more so, unfortunately, than we're having these days with voter participation, and do it in person. Unfortunately, 4 years ago in St. Louis, not in Kansas City, I'd like to point that out for Lauri, we did have a state representative race that was overturned by a judge in the city of St. Louis because of absentee ballot fraud. We have an ongoing prosecution right now in St. Louis County where absentee ballots were being changed in transit. And you should not say that because of absentee ballots and mail-in ballots, there will be fraud, but it does make it potentially easier to have fraud. And that's a very important difference. And as election workers, we're doing everything we can to make it harder for people to do that. But at the same time, we have to make sure that voters' privacy and secrecy is upheld. And we have had problems, and it has been reported not only in Missouri, but in other states, where ballots are taken out of ballot envelopes and changed. And we don't want a voter signature on the ballot because we don't want to know how you voted. That's your secret thing. So I will just say that the increase in non-in-person voting increases the potential for it. But I believe that across the country, election authorities are doing everything they can by law to make it more difficult, and that if the good people of this state and Kansas and the rest of the country come out in large numbers and vote in person, then no one's going to be able to mess with the election because they will be overwhelmed by the actual voters of the jurisdiction.
Perfect. And then we'll do a quick lightning round here. What are we expecting for voter turnout this go around? Do you guys have any estimations or anything like that, or is it a crapshoot?
We don't yet. It'll be a while before we get those numbers out, more towards the middle of the month. Obviously, voter registration is still going to be open for about 2 more weeks or just under 2 more weeks. When we see the uptick of how many new registered voters we have, how many requests for advanced ballots we have, we put it in the formula to get a percentage, and normally we lowball it. We expected about 27% turnout in the primary, ended up being over 30. So even though we have predictions, your ballot, your responsibility. As soon as you know who you're going to vote for it. If you're going to send it in. And I want to echo what Jay said is, most Kansas, even Kansas in a pandemic, vote in person. So, and it's a safe option. And the more folks that you vote, it's hard for the 1 or 2 people that try to cheat. And again, it's against the law. I don't understand why someone would want to, if you're going to break a law, you're going to do it with an election, and you're not going to gain anything, especially if you follow the direction of what Jay says. So you get enough people voting different ways, it's hard to cheat one way. And so I just want to echo what he said there. And if you're concerned about your vote not counting, just go vote in person then, unless you're really at risk of having a higher mortality result of being exposed to COVID.
Thank you. Same for Missouri side, estimates not yet for voter turnout.
No, I mean, our absentee turnout is extremely high. So I'd prefer to wait until after all the voter registrations mid-month. We'll have a better gauge.
Yeah, I think that's the great point that Lauri makes. Absentees way up, but we don't know if that's because more people are going to vote that weren't originally going to vote. We know some of that is cannibalizing the people that would otherwise vote in person. Until we have a better understanding of how many of those are new voters. I mean, look, I'm probably wrong, but I'm hopeful we finally we easily break 60%, but that would be good. It would still unfortunately mean that 40% don't vote that could, but I am optimistic, and I will try to cheerlead and hope that we actually see some really rare territory and get up past 60%.
Perfect. Well, I think we can start wrapping up here. You guys answered all of our questions. And I think we had fun doing it. I don't know about you guys. This has been a blast for me. And we all learned something. So that's a double bonus there. So I'll give you each a chance to just, parting words if you have any. Lauri, I'll start with you because you're next to me on my squares. I don't know what everyone else looks like, but Lauri, we'll start with you, then we'll go Jay, and then we'll go Scott.
Turn off the TV. And election laws are different in every state. Make sure you only check one box if you're requesting an absentee ballot. Don't check 2 or 3 because several things apply to you. And make sure that if you checked a box that requires a notary, make sure you get it notarized and they place their stamp and their seal. And also make sure you sign the ballot because we've also had some come back already with no signature, but that's our means of verification. If you're concerned, vote in person. I'm going to always echo that. If you're that concerned, vote in person. That's all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Secretary Ashcroft?
Thank you. I would just remind everyone that voting is how you make your voice heard. It's not just a privilege or right, it's a responsibility. We've all had the wonderful opportunity to live and breathe in this greatest country on the face of the earth. That's because people before us did the hard work of being good citizens. Voting is part of that. Vote in person. It's safe. Your vote counts. And it really makes it easier for us to get those election returns in as quickly as possible. Perfect.
Thank you. And I just got a little note sent to me now. KCP Public Library has teams of notaries ready to notarize ballots. So if you're looking for a notary, look up Kansas City Public Library. Thank you for that.
You can go to our website. We have mobile notaries that have mobilized and they will go to people's homes. So go to kcv.org if you have some concerns.
Perfect. And then Secretary Schwab, let's hit a home run here and close us out.
We'll just take the bat from right there. That being said, I want to echo what the other folks in Missouri said. If you have fear of your vote not counting, then go vote on election day or early in person. If your fear is COVID, then ask for that advance ballot. Make sure you sign it and then just turn it in at the election office or at a polling place on election day. But again, it's your country, it's your government, you own it, and this is like the shareholders meeting. This is where we decide who's going to lead us in the direction we're going to go. And you may think, there's a lot of voters in Kansas that really believe, oh, Kansas is a red state. Well, yeah, but we still have the entire state Senate up. We have the entire state House up. We have some state school board seats up. We have some county commission seats up. And a lot of these local decisions as it relates to response to the pandemic are being made on the local level. So if you did, our state will probably go for Trump because we just, for the last decades, we voted for a Republican president. And if you feel like, well, I just don't want to vote because of that, that's absurd. You've got local decisions. So go out there. It's your state, it's your city, it's your school board, it's your state school board and legislature. Get out there and make it count.
Well, thank you all today for joining us. I think this has been a great presentation. If you have any more questions, attendees, let me know and I'll help connect you and we'll get you resources to send out. But again, thank you, Secretary Ashcroft. Oh, I did so good until I just butchered that name. Thank you, Secretary Schwab, and thank you, Director Ealom, for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. And everyone else, thank you for joining us and have a happy Thursday. Yeah, it's Thursday. And thank you all.
Thank you.